Okay, Barry, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh my goodness,
Let's
I'm
do
so
it.
ready. All right, everyone. We are thrilled that you are here. We are in the Planning Post studio. We've had this in mind for a while. We've actually had this in mind, Barry, since some of the blueprint sessions and some of the
Right.
feedback
Yeah.
we got. So this is a series, month to month, Inventory Masters. And we always knew the first one we did, we would hit our favorite depletion graph, the 7 elements, the 7 steps, and we would really weave them all. So it makes sense that we call this one the depletion replenishment session. And we were just talking, Barry and I were, let's make sure we address why we're doing this. So by the way, who are we? Most importantly, we're both former inventory analysts, former buyers, former planners, whatever title you wanted to use. You want to just one or two sentences about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Dan said, once a buyer, always a buyer, and grew up in the hard goods, heating and air conditioning industry. Spent a lot of time buying in that world. Went through an implementation, and really just caught fire with using the system and teaching others about it, and it just naturally progressed through there. So love to be in front of people, just helping them to understand the foundation and the concepts and the mechanics, and just helping them to be better at their jobs.
And you know what? You are great at it. And my story is similar. I just came a couple decades before you, feels like anyway. And I know that we have in the audience, Barry, we have people that have not yet moved to an advanced system. We have people that have, and that's okay. We're going to take everybody to another level. And the why on why we're doing this session is so that we can really weave together what we talk about a lot, the 7 steps or 7 elements, of replenishment or buying and depletion. And so that's why I think it's perfect that we start with this picture. What we didn't want to do, everyone, we did not want to just go through the 7 elements followed by the depletion. We wanted to weave the two together, and that's why we start with this slide. We are going to weave both of these together, right? And I think we have a good game plan to do that. Now, Barry, let me hit you with this. And by the way, I've got the mouse. I'm driving, but I've got the best color commentary guy on the planet right here. So Barry, here's something we're going to hit. We have several slides for you, yes, but we did something the last couple of days as we looked at this and said, what do we want them to have on their tablet, on their notebook at the end of the session? Be prepared to have 13 key notes, okay? We plopped in 13 numbers when we numbered them 1 through 13, seemed to make sense. And so whenever you see one of these numbers pop up, we're going to make a key point. We feel like it's a point you should log down and know. And somebody might say, what'd you learn from that session? Grab that notebook and you'll have these 13 key points. And here's the first one. Are you ready? The first one is when you see these 7 elements, we want you to see them this way. Because these first 4 elements, this is really what you should be owning and controlling in your ongoing daily replenishment. Now, if you've already moved to an advanced solution, then this is what you do. Your life is this, the first 4. And Barry, shouldn't they get report cards then on these 4 elements and just let the replenishment be the end result of those 4?
Well, absolutely, because that's where the buying is done. While the mechanics are done in step 5, the buying is truly done in steps 1 through 4.
Yeah, and when you and I both were buying, before we went to advanced solutions, we really saw the whole thing as buying. We did it all the same day. We didn't keep components maintained ahead of time. Now, here's what we see often. And by the way, we're doing this session a week after visiting one of the best inventory teams on the planet, and that always motivates us. For us, the timing is perfect because even that group said they occasionally forget that their real job is to manage those components. And when they do it, you don't manage a component and say, yeah, but what's the lead time? You manage each one just on its own and let them come together later to come up with the order.
Yeah, and a key word there, to do a better job of managing, like Dan is saying, in these first 4 steps, you have to have ownership. That is a key word there. You have to own those 4 pieces to really do a good job.
So you own these 4, you let number 5 happen, and we are going to tear this depletion chart apart also. So initially, We're just kind of saying, look, this is where the elements are in action. You like that?
I love it.
This is where the elements are in action. So you can see those first 4 elements are here. We'll dive into each. And as they come together, so goes replenishment. We're showing what many are familiar with as a low stock point, an order up 2 level. Barry, face it, even those not yet using an advanced system, when they see this and this, what terms are they really looking at?
Yeah, they're looking at low stock point as a min and order up 2 level as a max. And that's really in its basic form. Yes, it's a min and a max, but there's so much more that goes into those mins and maxes, and we'll get into that.
That's right. All right, so that was point number 1, is they manage those 4. Now we're going to one that we've really torn apart in the last year for a lot of good. And so please watch this carefully, what we're about to do. We're taking these elements, focused again on these first 4, and we're saying this. We're talking about when and how much. Now, Barry, everybody knows that these 4 elements combined together, they make up, in step 5, they make up the decision of how much to buy. Everybody knows that. It's on the tip of their tongue. What they forget, what we all forget too often, is that these 4 components also make up the key decision of when to buy, which is why you have to keep these elements maintained ahead of time always, because they will tell you when to buy. You can't at the last minute when you place an order say, oh, lead time's 4 days longer. I should have bought 4 days ago.
Right.
So what he and I have done, and this is thing 2, we had thing 1, this is thing 2, is let's take this picture, Barry, and let's break it into when and how much. Years ago, we didn't do this. Now we do it like to start everything.
Yeah, and it completely changes your view of the 7 essential elements. So, you know, as you have looked at those through the years, and we've looked at those through the years, we had, you know, we nod our heads, yes, that looks good. I understand it. Well, it really comes to life when you put them in the view here, and then you start breaking this picture up into 2 halves.
That's right. So here we go. Take a look at this. We drew a line really right down the middle, not in the middle of the page, but in the middle of this depletion chart. And to the right, these elements, this piece here, this makes up the decision of when to buy, which is really Barry driving service. If anyone out there is having service issues, this is where you focus. If you're concerned about service, if you're missing service, you look at these elements, and it's not just your safety stock and lead time, but because Barry, take a look. There's that line, there's your demand forecast line. So not only the components, but your forecast that sits above those have to be strong. If you're missing service, we're asking, don't just jump to the left side of the chart, hit the right side, that's yours. And of course, on the other side, boom, we have so many people. They'll reach out and say, inventory's too high, what do we do? And they want to play games here, don't do it. If inventory is too high, you want to take a look at the how much to buy, which is all the stuff in here, which we will dive into because it influences the inventory. So take a look at this, because from now on, this is the picture. We'll let these up here kind of fade into a gray background, but they'll be there, which, by the way, we didn't used to do that, but it's become so important.
Right.
Even last week, these world-class buyers said, wow, thinking it this way is helping them think through what they need to attack when they're doing poorly, when they're doing well, when they have to attack some area.
Yeah, it's really the roadmap. It's a roadmap to problem areas, to opportunity areas.
So by the way, I'm looking at the list of the room. We have a ton of people that have arrived. Some have arrived just recently. If you just need to find a seat in the back, please do so. And we are thrilled that you're here. So that was thing 2, splitting this into the when and how much. And that is a critical piece of education. By the way, there are times when your teams as a group need to come together, look at these slides, and talk through what's going on in your businesses. All right, now that we've done that, now we can go through, let's go ahead and go through these different elements. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
This is not a session, Barry, where we're going to get into all the demand forecasting math and the how-to, but let's at least do this. Let's bring this chart back up, and you ready? I'm going to hit the button. Boom, we are focused on that yellow line, and thing 3 says this. You know that we say often The demand forecast is the most important component. We also follow that up and remind them, but it's just one component. All these others are key also. But here's why it's the most important, because it covers all of the other components. When you come up with these components in days, they're all converted to units using that forecast. If your forecast is way off, it's never going to be exact, but if it's way off, then all of these components are way off.
All of them are off. That's why we refer to it quite often as the foundation.
Yes.
Because it's the foundation of every component you see here and then some.
The group last week was so good about not just measuring forecast accuracy, and you never just say, hey, my forecast accuracy was within 1.5%, all is good. You have to break it down into the sectors, the unique sectors. How did you do on slow movers? How did you do on your new items, your seasonals, your non-seasonals? How about where you made manual forecast changes, your watch items? And that's just a few of them. And then, by the way, how'd you do on your slow-moving new items? You know, so you have the blend of all of that stuff. By analyzing that information, what you're trying to watch for is you will find some sector. And for some people, it's new items. They just don't put enough time there, Barry. But if a sector like that is way off, here's what's going to happen. The entire line sells out maybe slower. You won't notice that. But if it's a lot faster, well, you'll notice that. And it throws the whole, as you said, foundation right out of it.
It does. Take a look at safety stock, everyone, in that picture. Look what happens when the forecast is off and how it impacts the safety stock. Well, pretty much you've already moved that way up and you're in trouble right away. So yeah, this whole thing, you know, we talked about ownership a moment ago. As you own these components and you own the 7 essential elements, you're going to naturally do a better job. But understand that any one of these that gets out of whack, you are going to have basically a house of cards.
Yeah.
And it's going to crash in on you.
You were trying to find another word for whack for a second there.
I was.
But out of whack is it. Okay, so demand deviation, we are going to spend a second here, Barry, because of two reasons. We're going to split the audience right now into those using an advanced solution and to those exploring an advanced solution. Isn't that a better way to say it than not? Because everybody needs to be exploring a better way. And that is this. The missing link for most companies when they went to or will go to an advanced solution, yes, they'll get much better forecasting. Yes, they'll get all these different things. The biggest thing they were missing was understanding the unique deviation of all of the items and having that drive and influence the right safety stock. The right safety stock, because let's face it, here's what was happening with most of us. We had one amount of safety stock on everything. It was not enough on the really slow moving erratic. And it's actually way too much on your A items that are steady, calm, and consistent. And Barry, that's where the money is. So thing 4 is this. For those not using an advanced solution, this will be the answer. This might be your biggest gain. You will probably see the biggest inventory reduction right here in dollars, and you'll finally hit service where you couldn't hit service before. That's for them. For the others on the line, the Brian Seacrests of the world, I'd like to say, number 4 is this. It's a challenge from us. You know you have items in all these categories. The question is this: which of your categories is the largest? If you have 4,000 items that you manage, which of these categories has the most? Is it right here? They're all really erratic. Is it here? They're already so. Which one is it? As your boss, we feel like you should know it, and we'd want to ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, going back to what you said a moment ago on the super steady items, I still remember that picture from years ago and thinking, there's no way we're going to be able to get the inventory reduction. We don't want to pull inventory out of those super steady items, but actually that's what you want to do, because then it enables you to hit the missed service over in the super erratic items. It's a perfect balance of things.
You drop all that, yet you still hit your service, you still hit your numbers. And really, if everybody takes a look, and really what you want to do is you want to know how many items fall into each of these categories. Then you can see what's your average safety stock in each of these categories, and then turn that into a profit picture. Don't be shocked if you're losing money on a lot of these items right here because of how erratic they are. I always tell that story, as you know, back years ago. First company I implemented when I was implementing software was what is now Costco. It was called the Price Club.
Yeah.
And boy, their items in the grocery area, they just carried one of everything. So unlike our Kroger or Publix down the street that had 20 SKUs of ketchup, they had one big ketchup container, and it looked like this. It deviated about 7% instead of having 20 items that were all over this map. And that was their formula for doing business and offering those prices. I learned a ton from that experience. Every company out there should learn that same thing for their business.
Definitely.
Moving on, those deviations, they help determine how much safety stock. It's only one of the safety stock components. For most of your items, it's the main driver of that safety stock component. Now, I know, Barry, you would love to do 3 hours on demand seasonality.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time this time. But what we will do is, will allow me to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Seasonality and demand.
Yeah.
Are we mainly talking just like summer suntan lotion?
Yeah, right. No. This is the last area of mastery. We always say it.
Yeah.
This is Inventory Masters session, and this is truly the last area of mastery. Now, in theory, in concept, it's pretty easy. It feels like. I have items that I think sell more during certain times of year, whether it's driven by holiday, weather, special events. And of course, you have the definition of it. It's predictable, repetitive, not flat.
Yeah.
That's key there.
It's a good definition.
Year over year. But really, the challenge here, Dan, and everyone out there, is making sure that you understand I have items that are seasonal that I probably don't realize are seasonal.
Absolutely.
And
that leads, Barry, to this picture and this number. And historically, in our decades of working with companies, they find that they have about 3 times as many items that have seasonal patterns like you just defined than they thought they would have.
Yeah.
If they sat down and drew the list, in the end, they have at least 3 times as many.
Well, they do. And, I don't know that we have anyone on the call here who would wrestle with this, but I know we had someone who years ago would wrestle with us and say, well, I don't really think I have seasonal items. I have cyclical items. Oh, well, what does that mean? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had somebody say, we don't have any seasonal items, but we have some items that sell more in certain times of the year. Hey, that's a good definition too. So on the Planning Post site, one of the many blogs out there, one of our favorites is called Surprisingly Seasonal Items. And it's our favorite because you guys built it. The community came together, and it's all of these different items that they've found to be seasonal. We're surprised by it, and they put them together. And I love anything that our community does. Now, this inspires you to go find stuff. Let's just also make sure everybody knows, you don't just put a seasonal forecast on. You don't just apply that type of thing just to hit your service levels during that time of year. It's also, obviously, to make sure you don't have that inventory when you don't need it. But here's the surprising part. We used to do a lot of analysis, and when you do apply a proper seasonal forecast or seasonal profile where it's needed, you'll realize that the item is much more predictable than you thought. You used to see all that history and it looked like random variation, but a lot of it is expected seasonal movement. And the deviation factors that we just showed drop at least 10%. So there's a year-long inventory reduction by putting these on well. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, I love it. It goes back to safety stock. We were talking about the depletion graph a moment ago and the impact. It goes back to safety stock.
Yeah.
And how the forecast impacts the safety stock. And when you have the right forecast, right seasonal forecast, it's what is it? A great marriage.
It is. Hey, I'm about to pull up a slide, and don't be shocked if this graph doesn't match your tie. Here we go. So,
very close.
Discovering your outliers. Okay, so with our audience, those not yet on an advanced solution, when you jump on, obviously you are working by exception. Those that are on, they already know they work by exception. But you know what? Some people don't realize that when they work by exception, they control the exceptions. It's not just a task. You're basically saying to your thousands of items, I want to see all the ones that did something strange. So here's thing 5. Thing 5 is basically saying, let me see my distribution of how far off was my demand last period from my forecast. Was I 1 typical deviation off? 2, And these are all on the high side. 3 on the high side, 4 on the high side. Or did I sell less than expected? 1 deviation, 2, 3, 4. Wouldn't it be nice if you could see this picture? By the way, you can. See this picture and say, show me the ones. Well, for most people today, Barry, for many, they set some basic controls so that they see all the items that sell 5 or higher deviations on the high side, 3 or lower on the low side, which means they basically see something like this. You're going to deal with all these extremes. Now, the teams today, though, they have the ability to filter down even more. By the way, sometimes, see these 64 items? Years ago, even in advanced systems, you couldn't see those. But nowadays, you could look at a list like this, click on some various filters and say, show me just the new items in this one. Show me the new items in this one. I normally wouldn't care to see them, but I do because they're very sensitive, or the seasonal ones or so forth, or the ones that sell above 10 only. With all that filtering, you could take this picture and have it boil down to just a handful of items that you want to see. Isn't that cool?
It is. And in fact, just last week, we built a very similar, working with a group, and we built a very similar picture to this where they needed to see those 64.
Yeah.
And some different filters and things around that analysis. When you look back at the 7 essential elements, and we said the first 4 steps is where the buying is done, and step 5 is your replenishment step, which is the automated step. Well, the offset is that you spend less time buying, more time analyzing.
Yeah.
And your results are stronger. So let me say that again. You spend less time buying, more time analyzing, and your results are stronger. So the offset is that you're not spending all of your time going through item by item, down in the weeds, tweaking the quantities. You're actually doing the buying in the first 4 steps and then spending more time to do the analysis in a picture just like this.
And that's the formula for success. Do it ahead of time, hit the components.
Right.
So we're moving on. We spend a little more time in that one. We're going to spend a little time here, and then we're going to be, accelerating through. So on the lead time, I guess the main point here, Barry, is if you're still just plugging in numbers, you have to be thinking that these 2 terms need to come together, lead time and forecast. Our main point there is don't use your lead time in some type of system, whether it be manual or advanced. Don't use it to set inventory levels, to build safety stock. You got to define the truth there. And as you do that, we're kind of moving forward to say, be careful that, if there's a little bit of cushion in the lead time, that's one thing, but be careful that there's not, 7 days or so of cushion, because when you cushion your lead time, it's basically extra safety stock days, Barry. And that extra safety stock days, that adds to the inventory. So thing 6 is to be careful and try to tell the truth in the lead time. Try to make it a forecast just like your demand is.
Yeah, that's it, guys. Take a look at the picture really quick before we move to the next one, and how that buffer, that lead time buffer, pushes out everything. And again, a house of cards.
Yeah.
We're not telling the truth.
So last week, you and I visited a group that, again, we hold in high regard. And here's what they said. They said, where they're still having little issues where they occasionally miss, they realized that it was the last area of refinement for them. And we often call lead time the sleeper component.
Yeah.
And for them, it wasn't just the lead time, it was the lead time deviation. It was how the orders vary as they come in. So this is a very similar picture to the demand deviation, right?
Yeah, it is.
And what you have is you have the fact that you could have a lead time of 10 days and it misses within a day or 2. But you could have an average of 10 days where it comes in 4 and then 16, and that's an extreme difference. And if you don't recognize that and show that higher deviation, you'll be in trouble. So they motivated us so much, we went and pulled a bunch of data, about 500,000 SKUs, and we found this info. Isn't this colorful?
Yeah, I love this picture.
Here's what it says. It says, historically, this is across some companies, your suppliers, where the lead time is 0 to 7 days, the average deviation of those orders coming in is 30%. To the other extreme, 90 days or more, it drops down to being pretty consistent at 14%.
So in other words, not everything's 20%, right?
So that's why we drew that line there. Some people want to say, I'm just going to plug in a random number of 20% in my own system, whether it's advanced or not. That's a mistake. You're going to be not high enough on a lot of items and too high on others. This is a critical element that people often overlook and think it's just a random number, and it's not.
I know. And think about when you start a new item.
Yeah.
Where does it start? It's a default from, could be the vendor, could be the supplier. I mean, the global controls started at 20. Well, maybe the category is 14. Maybe it's 25, etc.
That's right. That's why, Barry, it's thing 7.
Yeah.
Thing 7 on our list, which I love it. Then we move on. We've hit demand forecasting, lead time forecasting. Now we're looking at how often we buy. And by the way, take a look at this. This low stock point, in a way, it doesn't even consider yet the order cycle when it's coming up with a decision of when to buy. Should I buy yet? I know what you're going to say. You're going to remind me that the order cycle actually influences the safety stock.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And you would be correct because you're a level 7 buyer. But hey, here's what we want to point out. We could spend more time here, but we believe, and this is from this year's experience, we ask people, hey, overall on your lines, when you buy, how much do you buy? And they quote to us their vendor order cycle.
Yeah.
If somebody says, look, I basically have all of my lines are about every 14 days, they'll say, I buy 14 days supply when I buy. No, that's your vendor order cycle, but 2 other things. Some items are slow moving, and they have those item economics kicking in. This is for those, especially with advanced tools.
Yeah.
Item economics kick in. So some items are on every other order, every third order. That picks it up. But then here's the big one, the buying multiples. That number is in days supply. Everything here is in days. We're pulling this number more and more to the forefront for people to see, companies to see, analysts to see. Because in this case, this company's average buying multiple was 12 days. Between that and the item cycles, when they buy, their actual, what we like to call effective order cycle, every time they buy is 20 days supply. That's really what's happening. Now, are you ready to give them a sneak peek to December's session?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I think they've earned it.
This will be a holiday session like no other. And we are going to focus on case studies from companies. So number 9 thing is intelligent buying multiple strategies. Here is an intelligent company, Barry, that you work with. I know they're in the food industry.
One of my favorite pictures.
What you don't see is that everything is set to, in days, 12-day buying cycles. These are their slow movers. These are their fastest movers because these are demand forecast ranges. Look at the cascading effect down here. Certainly the 0 to 1s when they buy. Sometimes you can't help but buy a half a year. But it comes down. The mid-range items, when they're buying here, it's 21 days supply. 10-day supply, all the way down to where they have a bunch of money tied up, but it's only a 2-day supply, which means when they buy, they hit that order up 2 level tightly, and it doesn't overshoot it. They don't top off.
Yeah, this is a perfect picture of a team that is dialed in to managing their multiples.
It's a really important financial one, and next month, December 5th, I believe, we are going to go through this. This will be one of the case studies. You wouldn't believe the inventory reduction some companies have dialed in by just getting smarter about these cycles. So don't miss it. That takes us to service levels. And by the way, some people say, isn't this safety stocks? It is. But the safety stocks, the end result, for them, this is their control knob. This is that dial. They're dialing in a service level goal. We could spend a lot of time here. Let's spend a little time here because thing 10, if you were to say to us, is there one chart, one slide that my company needs to see, like everybody in the company, president, CEO, all the way down? Wouldn't you agree this one is it?
This is it. This is the image of the company.
This is financially, everybody runs down the hall to the inventory team and says, just put everything at 99.9 in that system of yours. Well, here we go. Here we go with what many have heard before. You go from an 80 to a 90% service goal. Your safety stock needs double. 90 to 95, you turn that dial up, safety stock needs double again. 95 to 97.5, they double again. Take a look, they're going up exponentially. That's a big word. And you and I have done a lot of company simulations. You take the entire company and set all the items to 95 and then set them all to 99.0. You're talking roughly a 40% increase in total dollar inventory. We've seen companies try to play hero and put themselves right out of business. We've seen others put themselves in deep cash hurt for months. That's why a smart mix of service goals is the answer. And that's why before some new sales VP that comes in and says, turn everything to 99.5, you need to show this picture beforehand.
Absolutely. Adopt the smartest strategy for maintaining a really sharp mix.
That's right. It's a shocking picture. It's a great picture. It's an educational picture. And it leads us to really the simple end result. We should turn the light music on at this point, because these components are making up the quantity we buy. These components are driving the decision of when to buy. Let's just step it through in a nice, clean picture, okay? We pull this back up. If you have one item, Barry, when that one item gets here, you buy it back to here, and you just go like this. Wouldn't life be nice with one item?
Yep, down to the min, up to the max.
That's right.
Down to the min, up to the max.
When you have multiple items, as retail and wholesale companies do, you have to do what we call joint replenishment. And your goal is to keep things balanced, helps keep the inventory low, and buy as a team. So it looks like this. We're actually going to take a picture of really what's initially an out of balance line. We chose that on purpose, an out of balance line. Yeah. We have items all over the scale. They all have their own safety stocks, lead time. They're all living like this. They all have their own forecasts. So let's talk about how this becomes an order. And we're going to keep it simple and colorful. So these down here, when they reach or get below that low stock point, these are the culprits that cause the need, cause an order to be due for those using advanced, and are bought back up here.
Yeah, they're raising their hand. I need to be bought.
Buy me. Then when that happens, and only when that happens, you buy those and you say, this one will be needed in a couple of days, this one in 4 days. We are not in the world of placing orders every day, every other day. So you basically have to get these also. So we call these, and this is thing 11, Barry, these are the ride-alongs. They're coming along to balance the line and to really get together to prepare best for the next order. That's what they're doing.
Right. And everyone out there, if anyone asks as you're going through this and describing how this line is being bought, and they ask you, why are you buying the ride-alongs? Why don't we just wait? Well, because those ride-alongs have a service level you're trying to achieve, and before the next order cycle rolls around, they get down into dangerously low safety stock or out of stock before the next order rolls around.
Such a great point. And by the way, when I bought, I had to call my orders in because the facsimile machine was not that common yet. So what was terrible, Barry, is this was maybe my number one item up here.
Yeah. And
I placed the order and I said, and I'll take 3 of that. And they would laugh at me. Well, I only needed it to balance the line and to get into that position.
Right.
Kids today, they get to just electronically send them.
Send it.
So unfair. Then what happens is perfect harmony. They're all in the same spot. And with strong forecasts and all of these other components being nice and being clean, they'll come down the scale together, hit their low stock point as close to together as possible, and get into that rhythm. And that's why the team keeps working the components to keep this harmony going. Now, there will be at times when harmony is broken a bit. And you have the runaways.
Sure.
The runaways, Barry. And here's what happens. Here's what we want you guys to do. For those using an advanced tool, you have these. They can be something like a low stock point check. They're highlighted on our chart right here. You have to ask this question. Are they here because of just strong demand? Maybe one-time demand, there's really not some issue. Or are they here because of bad components? Are some of these components, including even the forecast, truly wrong and need to be fixed? Because if you don't fix it, this is going to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think of this as what I can control, which are the bad components, versus what I can't control, which is the strong demand.
It's a great point. I like the way you think. Okay, that's a nice, simple way to go through that. And by the way, Sometimes people can get into this mode where they feel like they're hitting buttons. They need to see this picture all the time as they're performing replenishment, even if they're not yet on that advanced tool. Okay, you can't stop at number 5. Number 5 is just to maintain service, but reality comes in with promotions that you have, events. We don't have time to go into all those, but know this. If you do a great job with the components, these will work well. And when you buy extra for any of these reasons, really puts pressure on that forecast, that demand forecast being super strong, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nothing worse than a 120-day forward buy ending up being 210 days on an item that you just didn't have the right forecast on. It was new and you hadn't been managing it well. But it leads us to the last one. Is it a valid order? And it's got to be the last one. Before I place that order, do I round to buying multiples? And do I have to hit a bracket or a minimum or a truck size? And let's look at that in the picture. Here we are. Everything was great. This took us through step 5. Let's say we don't have a promotion or a forward buy or anything. So we've gone through step 6. But now step 7 comes along and we say, okay, this totals 35,000 pounds. And we've got to hit 42. So what do? You start adding days. You start evenly adding days to everything. And here's the point we want to make. In the end, thing 13, which is what we said we had, 13 things.
Yes.
We added 4 days. We added 4 days, one at a time, and then said, is it there yet? Is it there yet? We've hit the 42,000 pounds. It's so important to know what we did. You got to build up properly. I'm going to go backwards. Not only did we buy more of everything to keep it balanced, we raised the order up 2 level to keep it balanced, but this line is also that vendor order point. So anything below this line that was not on the order before is, that's a really, if you miss this step, you'll have an item like this one that's now below everything. So we have to say, hey, you were not on the order before. Now you need to be on that order and buy it up also.
Yeah, that is balance. That is harmony. That's it.
So we come to this point where we look at this and we ask you this question. These 7 elements, do you have this picture as well as the depletion? Is this on your wall? If you're in a cubicle, is it on the wall of the cubicle? It needs to be, because it's on ours. Years, decades later, we still use this list as a checklist for what's going right and what's going wrong. I would ask Brian Seacrest this, and there's 2 of them I see in the room now, but I know the answer. They have a 3-foot by 4-foot version of this, Barry, as well as this depletion graph, and they gather around it when they have to talk about something that's going right or going wrong.
Right.
So critical. So we've gotten to a point, folks, where we do want to open it to questions in a minute. But since we're here, there's a last word we want to share. And actually, it's 2 last words we want to share. What's really interesting is we shared this in January over in Europe at a session. And we went back later, and they have this exact thing all over their walls. If it was your quote, my quote, all of a sudden we're infamous.
Yeah, and it's foundational.
It is.
It really is. Some of you have probably seen this depletion chart here for years, and some may be seeing it for the first time. But for the ones who've especially been around and seen this chart for a number of years, you probably never thought of it in terms of how we are describing it, which is the key to raising service is to buy earlier.
And just the opposite. The key to lowering inventory is not to buy less, it's to buy later. It's one of the first lessons right here, these 2 that I learned when I attended an advanced session. And I thought it was groundbreaking. Most people think you buy more to increase service, but it's you buy earlier. Buying more often doesn't help. If the lead time is running a few days longer, you're too late. The key was to buy earlier. So for those who didn't attend, go by their desk and share this groundbreaking thought process. So we want to open to questions, but we also want you to know that as excited as we were about this session, next month, December 5th, we get a chance to take a lot of what we showed here and show you case studies of companies that did great turnarounds in these different elements. And we'll pull graphs up with their permission of each one. If we can mention the company name, we will. In many cases, we will just kind of describe what type of environment they have, and we'll show the case study and try to motivate you to go in and do the same type of thing. So will you be attending that one, Barry?
Yes, I am there. Front and center.
Made plans as well. I will be there. And we want to open it to questions. We might need to ask Andrea through the glass there how we do that so that we're hearing. And while we're doing that, I'm going to do something kind of tricky. I'm going to drop this screen and remind everybody that so much of what we covered, there are detailed pieces, either blogs or videos or podcasts on planningposts.com, which my family hits all the time.
Mine too.
In addition, we've had questions. Some people that their neighbor could not attend. We will email out a link to the replay of this, and everyone will get that. And I think that's a great thing. Probably early next week is when we'll get that out to you.
So if anyone, this is Andrea. Thanks everyone for joining. If you have a question, just raise your hand or send it in the chat and we can unmute you and you can ask your question. Now would be a great time if you have anything you'd like to ask the guys about.
Here's one coming in. No, Barry is married. So sorry. And by the way, if there's certain things you want us to cover in some of those future sessions, certain questions, throw them at us anytime and we will pull them in and cover them during those sessions. So Brian does not have any questions. That's a little surprising. I guess the point he's making is, I know everything. That is so Brian. There are now 3 Brian Zekris. He is the winner in that regard. Well, Andrea, so far we have we've gone through the questions, and if there aren't any more, I guess we're in a position to thank everybody very much, and know that we'll get this replay out to you. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Please, I hope you documented those 13 key pieces we wanted you to remember, and take a look at them and discuss them. I know a lot of you guys do the Friday lunch sessions where you bring the bag lunch in and talk about something. Use those 13 key pieces and just talk through them.
Perfect time to do that. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys tuning in with us.
Andrea, thanks for setting this up. Can't wait for the one in December as well.
Yes, thank you guys, and thank you everybody on the line. We will see you on the next one. Be sure to sign up.
Thanks, Andrea.